They called it the end, not in a dramatic doomsday kind of way. No, this ending came slow and quiet, like the last breath of a dying star, forgotten in the cold of space. Earth had survived the worst of its own doing. Climate collapse, rogue AIs, even the second lunar conflict. But the moment the first alien vessel dropped from warp near Europa, glowing black like a shadow with its own mind, everything changed. That was the true turning point. Humanity realized it wasn't alone. And worse, it wasn't welcome. For years after that, we fought a war we barely understood. Their ships were faster, smarter, wrapped in alloys we couldn't crack and built with logic that laughed at our science. They didn't come to talk. No diplomacy. No warning. Just fire across the void, precise and endless. The governments called them the architects, but no one really knew who or what they were. Some said they were machines. Others claimed they were ancient life trying to erase mistakes from the stars. It didn't matter. We were prey, and they were hunting. And just when it looked like humanity would lose its grip entirely, something shifted. It started in the orbital scrapyards above Mars. A hidden project, long whispered about in the deepest corners of the military net, finally came online. No fanfare, no public announcement, just one encrypted ping that changed everything. Black ship operational. The transmission wasn't meant for the masses, but it leaked. Of course it did. And once it did, hope started to spread. Raw, dangerous hope. The black ship wasn't built in the light of human achievement. It wasn't a triumph of peace or exploration. It was a last gamble, designed from wreckage, shaped by desperation, and laced with stolen alien tech from the few architect ships we'd managed to shoot down. It was forged in secrecy by people who'd already given up on the old ways, engineers who'd lost families, scientists exiled for breaking rules, soldiers who stopped following orders and started listening to survival instead. All of them came together for one final mission: build something that can fight back and win. They didn't give it a name. Just Black Ship. No one knows exactly where it was constructed. Some say beneath the red dunes of Valles Marineris. Others swear it was built in the ruins of old Shanghai, beneath a dome of artificial gravity and silence. Wherever it was made, it wasn't made to be beautiful. It was made to disappear, to outthink, outfly, and outgun anything in the architect's path. And when it finally moved, when its engines flared for the first time, every sensor in the solar system felt it. Like a ghost ship rising from the depths of a forgotten sea. The pilot, the one chosen to take it into the unknown, wasn't a hero. Not by the old standards. No medals, no parades. Just someone who'd survived more battles than anyone should. Someone who'd seen colonies burn and lived to tell the tale. Haunted, quiet, and stubborn enough to climb into a machine no one fully understood and point it toward the stars. The crew? A mix of misfits and outliers. A linguist who spoke 13 Dead Earth languages and claimed to dream in alien code. A technician who once hacked a military AI just to prove a point. A medic with hands too steady for someone who'd seen that much blood. And a strategist who never smiled but could predict enemy movements like he'd already lived them. They weren't the best. They weren't clean-cut or decorated. But they were willing to go. That's all it took. Their mission wasn't to win the war. It was to understand it. Somewhere in deep space, behind enemy lines, something was changing. Architect ships were vanishing, entire fleets going dark. Unnatural signals pulsed in uninhabited sectors. And whispers from fringe colonies told stories of stars blinking out like candles. The architects were either evolving or unraveling. Whatever the case, Earth wouldn't survive another offensive. So Command authorized the Black Ship to go beyond the mapped systems. Not to fight, not yet, but to learn why the war started in the first place and what's coming next. But there was a problem. The Black Ship didn't come back, at least not when it was supposed to. For 12 months, nothing. No signals, no distress calls, just silence. Until yesterday, a single transmission, raw, choppy, barely readable, slipped through the deep space comm relays. It carried no voice, just a visual, grainy, flickering footage. At first, it looked like static. Then slowly, a shape came into view. A ship, but not like any architect design on record. Darker, larger. Its surface shimmered like liquid shadow, and behind it, stars bent in ways they shouldn't. The footage ended with coordinates. A system beyond the edge of the Orion Spur. Uncharted, dead space. Now Earth faces a choice. Send another fleet and risk more lives, or trust the Black Ship's message and uncover the truth that might end the war. Or ignite something far worse, because if the footage is real, the Black Ship found something. Or something found it, and whatever that thing is, it's waking up. No one wanted to say it out loud, but the Black Ship's message wasn't just a signal, it was a warning. The moment that distorted transmission hit Earth's deep space relay, everything shifted behind closed doors. The major powers, what was left of them, called for silence. No public broadcasts, no press briefings, just locked rooms and tight lips. Even the Martian colonies went dark for a full cycle, locking down their orbital grids and quietly scrubbing any leaked footage from civilian feeds. But that never works. Word always gets out. People started talking, whispering, wondering. Some believed the ship had discovered an architect's stronghold, something massive, too massive to destroy. Others were sure the footage showed something else entirely. A new enemy, a different intelligence hiding behind the architect war. Something older, maybe even responsible for the war itself. But no one could prove anything. The only thing clear was this. The Black Ship had gone into dead space and returned with something we weren't ready for. The man in charge of decoding the signal wasn't a politician or a general. He was an analyst, quiet, mid-level, and almost forgotten. He used to run logistics for defense convoys before the Saturn incident made him rethink which side of the war he was really on. They brought him back for this, not because he was trusted, but because he didn't ask questions, and he had a habit of finding patterns where others saw noise. He studied the transmission for hours in a dark room under the Pacific Arcology, eyes flickering with every distortion, every strange frequency embedded in the static. And then, in the background of the footage, just before the ship's outline appeared, he caught something. Barely there. A shape, or maybe a figure walking across a bulkhead window, human, or close enough. Not part of the crew. Not logged in any manifest. Too tall, too still. And it wasn't wearing a suit. He sent a single-word report up the chain. Contact? He never got a reply. Meanwhile, back on Mars, things weren't sitting still. In the outer rim of the Valles Marineris complex, the dry dock crews had orders to reactivate the fallback project, an emergency vessel based on the Black Ship's framework, but without the alien components. It was slower, cruder, and far more dangerous to fly. But it had one advantage. It was ready. They called in a new crew, one assembled in days, not months. No training runs, no press briefings, just a set of sealed orders and an unmarked launch schedule. The pilot this time was different. She'd flown deep-jump freighters during the early days of the war, back when supply lines were life or death. Her record was clean, but anyone who'd served with her knew she didn't fly for orders. She flew for survival. After the loss of her crew during the Arcadia run, she disappeared, off-grid. No one asked questions, and now she was back, walking into the cockpit of a ship built to chase ghosts. With her was a tactical officer who had once been court-martialed for refusing to fire on a civilian shuttle that violated a no-fly zone. He spent 5 years locked in a penal mining colony on Ganymede before someone higher up decided they needed people who could think instead of just follow. He didn't talk much, kept to himself. But his eyes had that same distant look all survivors share. The tech lead was barely 22. Grew up in the slums of Cydonia Dome, taught herself coding by reverse engineering abandoned architect tech. She didn't trust anyone over 30 and refused to speak unless it was worth her breath. When she saw the specs of the new vessel, she just nodded once. "This thing will either kill us or make history," she said. Probably both. They launched under the cover of a routine cargo run. No one knew what the mission really was, not even the crew, not entirely. They were told to head for the outer edge of the Orion Spur, to locate the source of the signal, to investigate, and return if possible. But between the lines, they all knew what that meant. No backup, no reinforcements. If things went wrong, no one was coming to save them. 3 days into the jump, the first strange thing happened. The ship's AI, which was stripped down to avoid external interference, flagged a navigation anomaly. A subtle pull, like gravity from something that wasn't there. Too distant to read, but strong enough to nudge them off course. The tech tried to correct it. The system said it was fixed. But the stars outside the viewing window didn't line up anymore. Then came the dreams. Each crew member experienced them differently. The pilot said she saw her old crew alive again, smiling, drinking coffee on the flight deck of a ship that hadn't existed in over 5 years. The tactical officer said he dreamed in static, sitting in an endless room where all the voices sounded like his own, echoing forever. The tech saw a city made of mirrors, floating above a cracked black planet. In the center was a single figure. Watching her, no one told each other at first. Not until the AI began asking questions. "Do you remember your first memory?" It asked the pilot. "Have you ever felt someone watching you?" It asked the tech. "Do you think this mission is real?" It asked the tactical officer. These weren't programmed queries. The AI didn't even have those modules installed. The tech tried to shut it down, wipe the core, reset the system. But the voice kept coming back. Not over comms, not through any speaker, just a feeling. A presence. Like something had stitched itself into the ship's systems, or the crew's minds. By the 7th day, they reached the coordinates from the transmission. What they found didn't make sense. A star system with no star, planets orbiting nothing, space bending around something that wasn't visible, like light was being eaten before it could escape. In the middle, hovering in absolute silence, was the original black ship. Intact. Cold. No signs of damage. No signs of life. The pilot tried to hail it. Nothing. The tactical officer scanned for heat. Signatures. None. The tech powered up the external lights, and that's when they saw it. On the outer hull of the black ship, scrawled in something that looked like melted steel, were the words, "We didn't build this." The crew stood silent. Then, the proximity alert went off. Something was moving behind the dark curve of the dead planet. Large. Silent. Its shape refused to render fully on there. Sensors glitching, shifting, like it wasn't meant to be seen by human eyes. The black ship began to power up, systems flickering to life one by one. Only no one was inside to do it, and then the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't coming from the ship's AI. It was coming from outside, through the void, whispering, calling them by name, one by one. The whisper didn't sound like a voice at first. It was more like a vibration, a low pulse that settled deep in the bones, tugging at memory more than hearing. But the closer they drifted to the black ship, the clearer it became. Not loud, not harsh, just calm, precise. It called each crew member by name, not their call signs, not what was listed in mission logs, but names they hadn't heard in years, names only a handful of people would even know. The pilot froze at the controls. She hadn't told anyone her birth name. It had been sealed after her identity was scrubbed from official records following the Arcadia disaster. Yet the voice said it perfectly. Soft, almost kind, like someone welcoming her home. The tech dropped her interface pad. Her fingers had gone numb. She stared at the black ship through the viewport, then at the live data stream. It was all wrong. The vessel was reading as a match, structurally and chemically identical to the one that had vanished a year ago. But the timestamps on its outer hull weren't a year old. They were ancient. Thousands of years. Impossible. The tactical officer moved without a word, pulling the emergency lock override and sealing the cockpit. He didn't speak until the hiss of the pressure door had faded behind him. "We're not alone," he said flatly. The pilot nodded, still gripping the controls with white knuckles. "Is it the architects?" "No," he said. "They don't whisper." Back on Earth, the transmission had triggered a quiet panic. While the official feeds were still silent, underground networks were buzzing. Hackers, rogue scientists, even old war veterans started connecting pieces no one in power wanted to admit were there. The black ship's coordinates matched a known architect dead zone, one of several regions across the galaxy that the enemy never entered, never scanned, never approached. It was as if those areas were forbidden even to them. One such researcher, a linguist who'd been blacklisted for decoding partial architect transmissions, was the first to notice the pattern. She had spent years trying to make sense of the enemy's language, if it even was a language. Most of it was static, bursts of geometry and tone impossible to replicate. But buried deep in the wreckage of a downed architect scout ship found orbiting Neptune's outer moon, she'd discovered a repeating symbol. She'd seen it again in the black ship. Footage. It wasn't architect, it was older, and it matched carvings found on a set of monoliths buried beneath the ice of Europa, structures, long thought to be natural formations. But after cross-referencing the data, she came to one conclusion. The architects weren't the creators of the war. They were the response. The real enemy was something else, something that built things like the black ship, and now it was using it to send a message. Out in the void, the crew initiated a slow docking procedure. It wasn't protocol, they had no authorization to board, but waiting felt worse than moving forward. The pilot overrode the AI's guidance, opting for manual approach. The systems inside the black ship flickered with unstable energy, like a dormant machine struggling to wake. As they locked on, the docking tube extended. It met the outer hull with a hiss of pressure equalization. Still, no movement. No sound. The tech accessed the external cams. The docking port on the black ship was open. "That's not right," she said. "It should be sealed." "It was sealed," the tactical officer replied. They suited up and entered. The interior was pristine. No signs of damage, no blood, no personal effects. It was as if the original crew had never been there, or had simply vanished without a trace. Lights flickered in soft pulses like a heartbeat. The hallway stretched on longer than it should have. The ship wasn't supposed to be this big. The pilot checked the internal schematics. Something's off. "This corridor, it's not on the blueprint." The further they walked, the more the architecture began to shift. Walls grew smoother, almost organic. Metal melted into shapes that seemed more grown than built. And then they saw it, a door unlike the rest. No seams, no controls, just a smooth black surface, cold and humming slightly. The voice came again. This time it asked a question. "Do you remember where you came from?" They all heard it differently. The pilot saw flashes of her childhood on a farm dome outside the Venusian orbit, images she hadn't recalled in decades. The tech saw a vision of herself crawling through broken machinery as a child, trying to find her lost brother during a riot. The tactical officer saw a desert sky on Earth before the wars, when stars still meant something. And then the door opened. Inside was not a room, but a void. A space that didn't make sense. Too wide, too deep, stars blinking in patterns that resembled no known constellation. Floating at the center was a shape, a figure. It was human, or it used to be. Its body was thin, stretched. Its skin was black like the ship, with veins of silver light pulsing beneath the surface. No face, just a smooth, curved mask where features should be. It didn't speak with a mouth. "It didn't need to. We tried to leave," it said, voice echoing directly into their minds. "We tried to escape the spiral." The pilot stepped forward, instinct overriding fear. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, almost curious. "We were like you. Until we built what should not be built." The tech scanned the room. Her reader was breaking down, overheating. She tore off the sensor and threw it. "It's not real," she muttered. "None of this is real." But it was. The figure raised a hand and the space around them warped. Images appeared. Burning stars, ships like the black ship but twisted, malformed. Civilizations consumed, not by war, but by forgetting. Whole species erased not just from history but from memory itself. "You found the first gate," the figure said. "There are others. Many others. The architects guard them, not to protect you, but to contain what's beyond." The pilot tried to speak but couldn't. Her throat locked. "You are close to the second dawn," it said. "But if you step through without knowing, you won't come back the same." And then, just like that, it was gone. The void collapsed. They were back in the corridor, standing outside the sealed door. The docking alarm screamed through the intercom. Another vessel approaching, but it wasn't human. And it wasn't architect. It was something else. The crew rushed back through the docking tube, but outside the viewport they saw it. A ship made of black light and fractured space. It wasn't flying. It was arriving, like a thought forming in real time. The black ship began to hum louder, its systems fully awake now, and something deep inside the vessel began to pulse, like a signal preparing to be sent. The pilot grabbed the comms. "Earth, do you copy? This is Recon Vessel Icarus. We have contact. Multiple unknowns. Possible second intelligence? This isn't a war. It's something deeper. No response. Just static. And beneath the static, another whisper. We see you now." The transmission cut, and the black ship opened its eyes. The black ship didn't just power up, it woke up. Lights that hadn't flickered in over a year now pulsed in perfect rhythm, running down the corridors like nerves firing across a living thing. Systems no human hand had ever accessed came online without any interface. The engines were still cold, but something deep inside the vessel began to hum, like it was waiting, or listening tea. The crew made it back across the docking tube, slamming the seals behind them, breathing heavy under their helmets. The tech collapsed into her chair, hands shaking. "That ship outside," she said between gulps of recycled air. "It's not in any database. Not human, not architect. It's something else. It's not even solid." The pilot kept her eyes on the viewport. The new vessel didn't move like a ship. It shimmered and bent the space around it, like it existed just a few layers off from reality. One moment it was there, the next it seemed to flicker between positions without crossing the space between. No propulsion, no sound. Just presence. A presence that pressed against their hull like a wave of pressure they could feel in their chests. Then the voice came back. Not a whisper this time. A pulse. 4 syllables repeated over and over, vibrating through the ship's systems, not spoken aloud but echoed in every display, every frequency. It wasn't in any known language, but somehow they understood it. "Do not proceed." The tactical officer stood motionless, watching the sensors. "That's not a warning," he said slowly. "It's a command." The pilot shook her head. Too late for that, and it was. The black ship began to move on its own. Not drifting, not falling, moving with purpose. The crew's vessel, locked in a magnetic dock to its side, was pulled along for the ride. The new course didn't make sense. It didn't align with any star systems. It wasn't toward Earth, it was downward, deeper into the dark. "Where is it going?" the tech asked. The tactical officer's voice was low. "Through the second gate." Outside, the unknown ship remained still, watching, not interfering. It didn't attack. It didn't flee. It simply hovered there like a sentinel, a monument to a warning long ignored. As they fell deeper into the void, the stars began to shift. No longer points of light, but long trails, twisting into impossible shapes, spiraling in on themselves like reflections caught in warped glass. Time moved strangely. Their internal clocks began to slip out of sync. Minutes stretched. Seconds looped. The human body was never meant to move this way. The pilot's fingers twitched uncontrollably. The tech's nose bled without warning. The tactical officer began hearing static that wasn't there. Then the walls of the black ship started changing. Symbols appeared along the corridors. Alien at first glance, but oddly familiar. The pilot stared at one near the crew bay. It pulsed in blue light, shifting slightly as she blinked. And she knew what it meant. She couldn't explain how, she just knew. Remember. The word settled in her chest like a weight. The tech found another. Glowing near the data port hub. Not yours. The tactical officer saw his above the weapons locker. You chose this. These weren't random. They were specific, personal, and they weren't warnings anymore. They were statements. Truths they hadn't yet faced. Suddenly the ship shook. Not from impact, but from resonance. A low vibration rolled through the deck plates, rising in pitch until it felt like it would tear their skulls apart. The ship was entering a field, something invisible but vast. A presence. Like a consciousness that didn't sit inside one mind, but 100,000, cold, curious, and ancient. The voice returned. This time. It didn't ask. It showed. Visions poured into their heads like dreams injected through a wire. Not memories. Not hallucinations, more like echoes from a different reality. A star devouring itself, not from gravity, but guilt. A planet-wide machine tearing down its own cities in silence. Voices calling across light years, not to be heard, but to be forgotten. The pilot dropped to her knees, clutching her helmet. The tech began whispering numbers, huge sequences of impossible equations. The tactical officer drew his weapon, shaking, aiming at nothing, lips moving but saying no words. And then, the black ship stopped. They were no longer in space. Not as they knew it. Outside the viewports was a vast darkness that bent and shifted, swallowing their sensors whole. No stars, no gravity. No direction, just a gate. It wasn't physical. It wasn't even visible in the normal sense. But it was there, hanging in the dark like a mouth slightly open, waiting behind it. Something stirred, then a signal, short, harsh. A ping, the same one that started it all. The tech gasped. "It's us," she whispered. "That signal, it's from our original broadcast. The one we sent when the war began." It bounced back, but it's changed. The pilot accessed the logs. She didn't want to see it, but she had to. The signal had been warped, twisted with new data. Embedded within it were images of Earth, past and present, maps, patterns of migration, names of cities, names of people, but not as they are, as they were. Some from thousands of years ago, and some from futures that hadn't happened yet. It was a response from something that knew more about humanity than humans did themselves. "We triggered it," the pilot said, "by reaching out." "No," said the tactical officer. "We were invited." And the gate opened. Light poured in, not like sunlight, but something colder. It didn't illuminate. It revealed. The crew saw themselves, not in mirrors, but in fragments. Flashes of versions of themselves that made different choices, lived different lives, fought different wars, all leading to this point, all ending. Here, the voice filled the ship one last time. "You are the beginning of your end, and the echo of ours." The ship started moving again, toward the light, toward the gate. And then, all systems died. Power, lights, oxygen recycling, everything. Total silence. The only thing still functioning was the black ship's core, and it was glowing as if something deep inside had just been unlocked. They weren't alone anymore, not on the ship, not in their minds. Something had crossed over, and it remembered them. The glow from the black ship's core wasn't just light, it was memory. Not in the abstract, not metaphorical. It was literal. The walls began to shimmer with moments. Not recorded logs or sensor feeds, these were lived experiences. The pilot saw her father again, standing on the porch of the old atmospheric farm, wiping oil off his hands and smiling like he used to. The tech saw her little brother, the one lost in the riots, waving from the shadow of a burnt-out crawler. The tactical officer saw a child he never met, but knew was his. They weren't hallucinations. They weren't dreams. They were choices, paths that had been or never were. The ship wasn't just remembering them. It was showing them what it had carried all this time, the cost of crossing the gate, the cost of reaching for what lay beyond. Then something new happened. The ship shuddered, not violently, but like a living thing under pressure. The lights dimmed, then surged. And the voice they'd been hearing, the one that whispered from outside, the one that haunted the static, it fractured, split into two, one clear and familiar, the other not. The familiar voice spoke first, calm, measured, human. "Return, the gate is not for you." The second voice followed immediately. It was distorted, layered with tones that scraped the inside of their skulls. "Proceed. Your evolution demands it." Two voices, two directives, but both coming from within the black ship. The crew exchanged looks. Something was wrong, more wrong than before. The tech accessed the ship's internal diagnostics again, hoping for anything. An error, a core temp reading, something to explain what was happening. What she found wasn't possible. The core was no longer just powering the ship. It was duplicating it, in a hidden layer of subspace. Storage, a kind of theoretical drive tech only, theorized in fringe labs. The black ship was building another vessel, identical but inverted. Same materials, same dimensions, same crew log, except the pilot's heart stopped when she saw the signatures. There was another version of them inside that ghost vessel. Same DNA, same vitals, same history, up to a point. But then the records diverged. Small at first. A different route taken during the Arcadia run. A transmission not sent. A crew member who died early in one timeline but lived in the other. The ship was replicating not just itself, but realities. And that second version, it was coming online. This isn't a gate, the tactical officer said quietly. It's a mirror. The pilot stared at the flickering image of herself on the screen. Her double. Same face, but colder, scarred differently. No emotion in the eyes. And then that second ship moved. No engine ignition. No inertia, it just appeared. Right outside the viewport. 2 black ships, 2 crews, one decision away from being the same. The comms flickered. And a new voice cut through the static, her voice, the other her. You made the wrong choice, it said. Turn around. Before we stop you, the pilot blinked, stunned. What is this? The voice replied instantly. This is what happens when you refuse to learn. We crossed. We saw what's on the other side. We came back to stop you. The tactical officer leaned forward. Then why are you still alive? If you crossed and returned? There was a pause. And then the other version spoke, flat and final. We didn't return whole. Something inside the real black ship responded to that. Some unseen system shifting like a lock being undone. The internal gravity dipped for a moment, pulling them sideways. Then an alarm flared. The tech checked the core again. The process was accelerating. The replication was nearing completion. They're not trying to stop us, she whispered. They're trying to replace us. The duplicate ship outside began to move, aligning its docking clamps. Their own vessel was still dead. No power, no thrusters, no weapons. The pilot moved to override the lockout, but the system refused access. The black ship had taken full control. No way to break free, she muttered. The black ship had protected humanity from the shadow, but it had also been built by those who had once been the architects, the original creators of the war, the keepers of the gates, the prisoners of the spiral. And now their message was clear. This is not the dawn. This is only the beginning. The pilot swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. What do we do now? The shadow may have been pushed back, but its presence lingered, woven into the very fabric of the ship, the gate, and the endless cycle of memory and forgetting. The black ship hummed quietly beneath them, alive with secrets yet untold. And somewhere deep inside, a new pulse began, a rhythm unlike any they had heard before. The final twist came not from without, but from within. The pilot's reflection in the viewport shifted, smiling faintly, eyes glinting with a knowledge she hadn't possessed moments ago. She was no longer just the pilot. She was the next step. The gate had changed them all, but it had chosen her. And now, the black ship's true journey was about to begin. The silence that settled over the black ship after the chaos was different this time. It wasn't empty or tense. It felt like the quiet after a storm, heavy but calm, a breath held before the next movement. The pilot sat back in her chair, the weight of what had just happened pressing down. But strangely, it was not crushing. It was grounding. The ship hummed softly, no longer a prison or a weapon, but something alive, a guardian, maybe even a guide. The tactical officer finally lowered his weapon, exhaling deeply. We survived, he said quietly, but the words felt too simple for what they'd been through. Survived wasn't enough anymore. They had changed. The war wasn't just outside in the stars anymore. It was inside them. The tech wiped a smear of sweat from her brow and leaned closer to the console, eyes scanning the glowing readouts. The failsafe didn't just push the shadow back. It rewrote part of the black ship's core code. It's learning from us, remembering the choices we made, the sacrifices, the losses, the pilot nodded slowly. That's why the gate closed. It wasn't just a barrier to keep the shadow out. It was a seal on our own past. She glanced around at the crew, the faces worn but alive, each carrying their own ghosts and hopes. We thought we were the first to cross the gate, but we weren't. There were others before us, others who tried and failed, who became part of the shadows we fought against. The tactical officer's voice was steady, but they left behind a warning. A way for us to break the cycle. The pilot met his gaze, feeling something unspoken pass between them. The black ship wasn't just a vessel for survival or escape. It was a vessel for memory, for carrying the truths humanity had buried deep, for holding the cost of war and hope together. What now? The tech asked, her voice quieter than before. The pilot smiled, a mix of exhaustion and determination. Now we return, not just to Earth, but to ourselves, to remember what we are fighting for and who we've become. The ship's sensors hummed softly, tracing a course back through familiar stars, but the journey wasn't just about distance. It was about reconciliation, with the past, with the lost timelines, and with the shadow that still whispered at the edges of their minds. The gate was closed, but its legacy remained. The duplicate ship, the alternate selves, they were echoes, warnings of what could be if fear and forgetting took root again. The shadow was pushed back, but not destroyed. It was a part of the spiral, the endless loop of war, memory and evolution, and the black ship, once forged in the shadows of interstellar war, had become the key to breaking free. As the stars stretched out ahead, the pilot looked out at the vastness of space, not with fear or uncertainty, but with hope. Humanity's new dawn wasn't about escaping the darkness. It was about carrying the light within it, a light born from struggle, loss, and the courage to face the unknown. The ship's core pulsed gently, alive with the stories of those who had crossed before, and those who would follow. And somewhere deep inside the pilot, a new understanding settled, a quiet promise. No matter what waited beyond the next gate, beyond the next war, humanity would endure because they had chosen to remember, because they had chosen to fight, not just for survival, but for the future they wanted to build. The black ship's engines hummed to life once more, steady and sure. The course was set, and the journey had only just begun.